The whole world right now is focused on the COVID-19 outbreak. There's a huge worry about the effects that the virus has on the heart and the lungs, which can prove fatal. But a lot of the neurological community are wondering whether this virus can invade and infect the nervous system. Can coronavirus get into the brain? And if so, what does it do there? First, let's talk about some basics of the virus. A virus is unable to reproduce independently. They require a host, much like parasites, to provide them with the ability to replicate. They do this by hijacking your system, invading your cells, and repurposing their DNA replication machinery to produce more of themselves. These invaders can be particularly destructive if they target cells associated with the immune system, for example, such as in HIV and AIDS. Taking out your defense system is a clever and potent attack strategy. Viral structures can be categorized into helical, icosahedral, complex, and enveloped types. COVID-19 is actually a single strain of a large family of coronaviruses. You may have heard of previous outbreaks of other strains of coronavirus, those being SARS back in 2003, and more recently MERS from Saudi Arabia in 2012. These viruses, being from the same family, share the same round football-like appearance with spike-like protein projections on their surface. The shape is reminiscent of a solar corona, hence the name. Corona meaning crown, and solar meaning of the sun. Solar coronas are beautiful things though, but this little critter, not so much. The complete genome of the 2019 novel coronavirus, also called SARS-CoV-2, has already been sequenced in Nepal and Korea. This just means that we know all the genes that code for building this coronavirus. Comparing the virus genome from a patient with COVID-19 in Korea with COVID-19 from other countries shows that the genes have got a 99.9% similarity, so it hasn't changed much compared to when the outbreak initially began. Compared with the SARS and MERS strains from previous outbreaks, the genes there were 77.5% and 50% similar respectively. The scientific name given to COVID-19 is SARS-CoV-2 because of its similarity to the genetic material of SARS. We don't fully understand where this strain evolved from, but genetic studies show a similar virus found in bats. And this could be the original strain of COVID-19. Exactly how this virus adapted to transmit to humans isn't clear. It's possible that a mutation in the original strain was sufficient to allow direct transmission from bat to human. So, how do they get into the brain? Coronavirus is one of several virus families that's considered neuropathological, meaning that it will cause damage to the nervous system. Other neuropathological viruses include human respiratory syncytial virus, the influenza virus, and the human metapneumovirus. Generally, the blood-brain barrier does a good job of keeping these viruses out of your brain. You can think of the blood-brain barrier as a fortified wall protecting the brain. It's extra selective about what it allows access to the central nervous system. Although it's good at its job, unfortunately, it's not impenetrable to all unwelcome visitors. Sometimes respiratory coronaviruses are able to jump the blood-brain barrier and gain access to nerve cells in the brain. Remember how I said viruses can hijack your cells? COVID-19 does this by interacting with a cell receptor called ACE2, angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptors. Generally, these receptors are highly expressed in the lungs, which is why the lungs can become severely affected by COVID-19. But ACE2 receptors are also found in many other tissues, including the heart, the kidneys, intestines, and testicles, for example. In fact, these receptors also seem to be widespread throughout the brain, with particular focus where neurons are involved with heart and lung function. This opens up the possibility of COVID-19 infecting the brain. So let's talk a bit more about that. Over the course of the current outbreak, increasing numbers of COVID-19 patients are showing neurological manifestations of infection. These can include symptoms ranging from headaches to strokes, loss of sense of smell or sense of taste, and muscle damage, usually associated with liver and kidney impairment as well. Previous experience from the 2003 SARS outbreak suggests that there is potential for patients to experience neuronal damage, even without severe inflammation in the brain. Not everyone becomes affected by neurological symptoms, so the timeline of infection may be important here. It's thought that the brain may only become involved if the spread of COVID-19 occurs at an early or even later phase of infection. This can be achieved if the virus manages to get into the body's circulation, or if it covers the cribriform plate, which is a sieve-like structure that lies between your nasal cavity and the front base of your skull. Getting into the bloodstream means that the virus can be transported to the blood-brain barrier. Because this structure is dense and requires a good oxygen supply, it's supported by lots of tiny little blood vessels, and we call this the microcirculation. In these vessels, red blood cells that support the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide can only travel in single file. This makes the blood flow at the blood-brain barrier sluggish and may facilitate the interaction of a COVID-19 virus spike protein with ACE2 receptors in the cells that line these blood vessels. Any damage to this lining or movement of the virus itself can enable access to the brain, bringing us back to the ACE2 receptors. Once the virus reaches brain cells, any neuron expressing ACE2 may be targeted. Clinically, this means doctors should be vigilant about investigating patients with early stage COVID-19 infection that also exhibit an altered sense of smell, just in case there's a risk of central nervous system becoming involved more. So hopefully we've understood a little bit about how the virus can infiltrate the nervous system, but what about the effects that it has on the brain itself? Coronaviruses can cause direct inflammation of the brain, and that's called encephalitis, or of the spinal cord, encephalomyelitis, leading to various rapid onset or acute symptoms that range from seemingly normal to quite alarming. Examples can include severe headaches and fevers, forms of epilepsy like convulsions, and a loss of consciousness. More insidious perhaps is the effect of demyelination, that's degeneration of the fatty sheath around neuronal axons. Having said that, it's important to note that the full capacity of coronavirus to invade and alter the CNS or central nervous system is not well understood. But looking at COVID-19 specifically, we have evidence that's been published from two of the hospitals at the epicenter of the outbreak in Wuhan in China. The authors reported neurological problems in 78 out of 214 of their lab-confirmed cases of COVID-19, also finding that severely affected patients were more likely to have neurological problems than those patients without severe infection. The most common neurological complaints included dizziness, headache, hypogeusia, and hyposmia. Hypogeusia is a reduced ability to taste, whereas hyposmia is a reduced ability to smell. Importantly, researchers are trying to figure out all the ways in which COVID-19 is involved in respiratory distress, which is one of the most characteristic symptoms of COVID-19, alongside fever and dry cough. Of course, COVID-19 directly infiltrates the lung, causing damage to the tissue itself, and may cause cytokine storms. However, with such high rates of patients in intensive care needing either high-flow oxygen or supportive ventilation, that's both non-invasive and invasive ventilation, there is some suspicion that the neuroinvasive nature of coronaviruses may play a role in the acute respiratory failure of COVID-19 patients. This understanding is based off the study of similar coronaviruses like SARS and MERS. SARS and MERS were believed to enter the brain via the olfactory nerves, the nerves that you use to smell, where they continue to infect specific brain areas, including the brainstem, an area known for respiratory control, or the control of your breathing. Although this sounds quite ominous, it's important to point out that significant cerebral involvement is one complication of many in COVID-19 patients. Fatal cases are most likely linked with elderly patients with complex underlying medical problems, and also immunocompromised individuals. These problems cause widespread dysregulation of homeostasis in multiple organ systems, and unfortunately make it particularly challenging for these patients to receive successful treatment and to survive. I hope everybody is self-isolating, staying safe, and listening to the advice from their respective governments. If you like the video, click a like button and comment down below if you've been affected by COVID-19.